You ever notice how every room has that one person who barely talks? Not rude, not shy, just quiet. They're the ones sitting back while everyone else fills the air with noise. But don't get it twisted. They're not zoning out. They're zooming in. They're catching every detail you missed. The quick glance, the fake laugh, the story that doesn't line up. They're not ignoring the room. They're mapping it. Silence isn't emptiness. It's data. Quiet people don't speak because they have nothing to say. They speak only when it matters, because they've learned that every word has weight. And when you throw words around carelessly, you end up losing their value. So they choose. Carefully. They pause. Not because they're slow, but because they're filtering, calculating, editing in real time. It's not overthinking. It's emotional intelligence with subtitles. The world doesn't understand quiet. We reward the loud, the fast talkers, the confident performers, the people who always have something to say. But confidence isn't volume. And talking first doesn't mean you're right. The quiet ones, they play a different game. They listen longer. They observe deeper. And when they finally speak, everyone else shuts up, because silence has built them gravity. See, quiet isn't passive. It's strategic. It's a pause before precision. And that pause, that's where the truth usually hides. Ever met someone who rarely talks? But when they do, you feel it days later? That's not luck. That's refinement. They don't just speak, they deliver. They've spent hours, maybe years, collecting the right words. By the time they release them, they hit different. But here's the thing most people miss. Quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes silence is a shield, a defense built from growing up around too much noise, where every opinion turned into an argument, and listening was safer than talking. Psychologists call it adaptive silence. It starts as protection. Then it becomes identity. When you learn that calm equals safety, you start building a life around quiet. Not because you're scared, because you've finally found peace, and you're not giving it up easily. Quiet people aren't antisocial, they're just selective with their energy. Noise drains them. Superficial talk bores them. They crave real connection, the kind that doesn't need to shout to feel real. They'll take one deep conversation over 10 loud ones. One genuine moment over 1,000 empty words. Because they've learned something powerful, the point isn't to speak. The point is to mean it. Silence sharpens perception. When you stop talking, your senses amplify. You start hearing tone instead of just words. You start noticing hesitation instead of confidence. You start seeing truth in the details. Quiet people live in that layer of awareness. They don't rush to reply, they read between the lines. While everyone else argues over what's being said, the quiet one already knows what's not. But don't mistake stillness for simplicity. Inside a quiet mind is movement, ideas, emotions, patterns, possibilities all happening at once. That's why they pause before speaking. They're not searching for words. They're aligning thoughts. Silence isn't the absence of thought. It's the organization of it. You see, quiet people don't fill space. They define it. When a quiet person enters the room, the energy shifts. People notice. Not because they're flashy, but because they're present. They don't demand attention, they attract it. And presence beats performance every time. Here's something else. Quiet people carry empathy like radar. They feel what others miss. They absorb tension before it breaks. They remember small details no one else cared about. That's not magic. It's awareness. Their silence is scanning the emotional field. And it's exhausting sometimes. That's why solitude feels like recovery. Not loneliness. Reset. And yeah, sometimes that silence gets heavy. When you take in everything but rarely let anything out, your mind fills up. So if you're one of the quiet ones, learn to release it. Not to everyone, just to someone who's earned the right to hear it. Silence is protection. But don't let it become a cage. Boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. You don't need to open the door for everyone. Just make sure you haven't locked yourself in. Quiet people bring balance to a loud world. They bring depth to chaos, clarity to confusion. They don't speak to dominate, they speak to connect. In a culture obsessed with being heard, they remind us how to listen. Because real connection doesn't need volume. It needs presence. So if you're one of them, the quiet, the observant, the ones who feel more than you show, don't try to be louder. Don't force yourself to match the noise. Let them rush. You watch. Your silence is your strength. Your calm is your superpower. Your words don't need to be many. They just need to be yours. Because the world doesn't remember who talked the most. It remembers who made them feel the most. And the quiet ones? They do that effortlessly. Silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom that doesn't need to raise its voice to be heard.